I got to making television, and we're in Chicago now, and I spent a lot of time here in Chicago doing Empire and various shows in New York and Los Angeles, and just everywhere. And so I just felt like it was time to get back to my roots and make another film.
And write it yourself?
Yes, because I've always, I've always admired filmmakers who wrote their own stories, and I feel like I'm a better filmmaker than I am director. And filmmakers, I find someone who, a filmmaker writes and directs and creates their own film, and a director sometimes just interprets someone else's work. And I enjoy both, but I think perhaps maybe I'm a better filmmaker.
What made you, did you identify with this story?
I really identify with the feeling in the story. It's about a family. It's about two brothers. It's about a mom trying to protect her two sons, and I really identify with that feeling of isolation, that feeling of posing, as a young man trying to make their way into the world. That feeling of being an artist and wanting to express oneself and not having an outlet. And so I really identify emotionally and spiritually with the story.
Follow my every move.
Michael.
I'm Aisha. I know your brother, Francis. Everyone knows him.
Well, the theme of it is really, it's love, but it's also fear, not knowing what's going to happen next. And Ruth, the mother, Marcia Blake.
Marcia Stephanie Blake, yeah.
Yes. She does an amazing job of trying to keep these boys in check or safe. Talk about how you got that kind of emotion out of her and from the boys.
Marcia Stephanie Blake is an outstanding actress. And, when I met with her, we talked about our personal histories, we talked about our families, we talked about our mothers. And I said to her, look, just play our mothers. Because her mother, both her mothers immigrated to a different country, they sacrificed. And so she was very familiar with those feelings. And so I really asked her to translate those feelings into just play our mothers. And, Lamar, who plays Michael, is his mom is an immigrant. His mother was born in Jamaica, came to Canada as a child. And so he understood that sense of a child realizing for the first time the sacrifice a mother makes for her children. And the same with Aaron Pierre, and I think at some point in your life you take your parents for granted, and then you sort of realize the sacrifice that they've made for you.
It usually is when you become an adult.
It's usually when you become an adult, or it's usually when you have your own child, or it's usually when you've had a personal experience and you realize that your parents, because we all grew up and thinking our parents are superhuman, like they're kind of in some ways the embodiment of being kind of the strength and being strong, and then you realize at some point that they're vulnerable and they're human,
One of the disheartening things about the movie is seeing the similarities of the young black male experience north of the border and in the U.S., especially vis-a-vis dealing with authority, and that was disheartening because there's no safe place to be a young black man, is there?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's the film does talk about the relationship between these young black men and these various authorities, these institutions, whether it's educational institutions or police or even just getting a job. But I didn't want to make the film about that. I didn't want to focus on that. I wanted to focus on the lives of these young men.
You never know when your break's coming.
talk a little bit about the music and the role of the music in the film? There's a lot of music in it, and it's important.
Music, I wanted to really, because it takes place in the 90s, and one of the characters, Francis, wants to be a musician and wants to be an artist that way. It was important to have that music from the sort of that period, and also to music from the Black diaspora. Music from, I'm from Jamaica. I was born in Jamaica, but I live in Canada now, and there's all this amazing music from the U.S. and from Britain and from Africa. I wanted the full spectrum of black music to be a part of the film.
You play around with the timeline in this film, and you go back and forth between them being older and younger as really young kids. Did you write that exactly that way, or did you play around with the timeline in editing?
The novel, which the film is based on, plays around with time a little bit, but I wanted to take it a little bit step further, and so some of my favorite films play with time, and they play with time in such a way that by the time you get to the end of the movie, there is a kind of emotional experience that happens, because you sort of see the different moments in time that ultimately culminates in a kind of satisfying catharsis, and I wanted to sort of emphasize that and play with that.